everyone. The topic I wrote is the Yemen crisis, the largest humanitarian crisis in history. Death is always expected in wars. It's the pain and suffering that come with it that deeply affect the people around it that seem unexpected. The humanitarian crisis in Yemen is a result of a long 8-year civil war within the country. A civil war that has affected those who used to call it home. As evidence proves, Yemen is now a place of constant famine, disease, and homelessness. Ever since the start of the conflict in 2015, the UN Refugee Agency has reported upwards of 23 million civilians are in dire situations and need of assistance. Many of the people who do not partake in the conflict are eventually drawn into it as their homes are destroyed and their children are starving and sick from the disease. This issue is still going as COVID-19 has only increased the spread of sickness. The crisis started out with a want for lower fuel prices and a yearning for a new system of government by the Houthis, who went to war to take over Yemen. With this, Saudi Arabia intervened to stop the expansion and restore the previous government. The constant violence has caused a large humanitarian crisis with its deaths, homelessness, and diseases and famine. The crisis has caused the destruction of civilian homes, leaving them homeless, and as seen, has limited children's access to education. This has been evident since the start of the war and the Saudis' effort to reclaim the territory lost. Several people lost their homes due to bombings and shootings, as reported by the BBC. 100,000 people have been displaced because of the fighting there, and that 2 million civilians are at risk. These numbers are only increasing as the war persists. They are separated and left to live in temporary homes filled to the brim with others in the same situation. The environment is no longer suitable for the people to live in, as they continually endure the lack of resources at their disposal. As the UNHCR stated, many IDPs in Yemen live in dangerous locations, characterized by the widespread food insecurity and lack of water, healthcare, and sanitation services. This statement further shows the hardships the Yemeni people are facing and the increasing crisis. It is not only the casualties from war and famine that cause such a crisis, but also the wide ranges of diseases that affect the people even more. These diseases have such an increasing effect on the livelihood of millions of people that there have been no change in the age and gender group of those infected. The COVID-19 pandemic is not helping this cause either, as it only increased the situation at hand and limited the resources. As explained, they suffer from COVID-19, cholera, diphtheria, measles, and dengue fever. As shown, the effects of the war further weakened their immune systems, making them more accessible to these illnesses. The people rely on the aid of other countries in medical care as well. Without it, a large majority of the population would gradually become infected and unable to continue to support themselves and their family. Evidence has found that children are the most affected by this ongoing crisis in Yemen, as their lives are changed due to the war and their low resources. As stated recently, with the country's ongoing issues of famine and disease, children are the ones who make up the majority of the deaths. As stated by the UNICEF, 10,200 children have been killed or maimed since the beginning of the conflict. Many of these children correlate to the limited aid that they have access to. Many countries have cut back on aid given during the COVID-19 pandemic, leading UN nations to reduce food rations for some 8 million Yemenis in January 2022, a cutback that has a noticeable effect on the quality of life and how children are supposed to survive, and they have not seen any improvement since then. The people of Yemen are facing a constant humanitarian crisis of deaths, homelessness, disease, and famine. These factors, as presented, are causing deaths in the millions, and the number is only increasing, as various sources state, as they endure the effects of the civil war. Then as far as aid goes, some countries are providing aid and support with various donations. Support has been limited due to given the circumstances of the COVID-19 pandemic. The Yemen crisis has affected not only adults, but the children, and the people of Yemen have seen this. As stated by Iran, a mother who lost her child due to the war. The children who survived aren't normal anymore. I wish that the war stops and we get back to the normal life. My last wish is that no mothers feel what I felt.